President Biden and Microsoft President Brad Smith announcing Microsoft's $3 billion AI investment in Wisconsin this week. And joining us now with more on tech's impact on middle America's economy, Steve Case, co-founder of AOL and chairman and CEO of Revolution. He's also the chairman of the Case Foundation. Good morning to you.
Good
Steve,
morning.
This is another example of trying to do, I think, what you've been trying to do for a very long time. However, it's been tried in Wisconsin before, as you know, with Foxconn. So I'm curious what you thought of that news.
I think it's very positive. We started the Rise the Rest effort actually 10 years ago when we were first in Detroit. We'll be back there in a few weeks to celebrate what's happened over the last 10 years. And we're seeing this more broadly around the country, including in Wisconsin. We were there with our Rise the Rest bus 6-7 years ago. Since then, Microsoft, working with the Green Bay Packers, broke ground and built the Titletown Tech facility, a kind of a hub for startups in Wisconsin. And this announcement of a $3 billion commitment from Microsoft to build out a AI facility in Wisconsin is helpful. It's also, I think, important to recognize we're seeing a transition from AI being really about the big horizontal platforms, the large language models, which have been centered in Silicon Valley, to now more vertical AI, which creates an opportunity all around the country. How does AI impact manufacturing, which is a focus in Wisconsin, or how does it impact agriculture, ag tech, or how does it impact health tech? We're seeing more and more companies, including some we backed at Revolution, that are focused on vertical AI. So it's not just the generalized platforms, it's more specific ways that different industries can be reimagined and be more productive because of AI. And that creates the opportunity for more regional innovation.
Before we dive in fully to the AI story, I have one other question that relates to just the rise of the rest and sort of distributing, if you will, the success and wealth of Silicon Valley to the rest of the country, which is to say, we had conversations during the pandemic and after the pandemic about these idea of Zoom cities and this idea that there was going to be talent all over the country that was all of a sudden going to be used in very different ways because people were not going to be working at the office. They were going to live all over the country, and the headquarters might be on a coast or whatnot, but it didn't matter. And now there's been this complete shift, it feels like, back to everybody into an office place, and how you think that's changed maybe how you think about that.
I don't think it's changed too much. What we've seen, even with Rise the Rest, we've now backed over 200 companies in 100 different cities. A lot of them have been in person all along, even during the pandemic. So it's really more the big cities, the New Yorks, the San Franciscos, that were tended to be more, kind of focused on remote work. And these startups, as they start scaling, are still benefiting from being able to tap into expertise in other places, particularly around hypergrowth. How do you scale these companies? That was a challenge. Sometimes some of these startups in Rise the Rest cities sold out too early because they didn't really have access to either the capital or the talent to scale those companies. They are still tapping into that using remote workers. So I think we're moving from a world where 5 years ago everybody was in the office to 3 years ago essentially everybody was working remotely to now this more hybrid concept, and different companies, depending on where they are in their life cycle, their scale, the challenges they have. Some have a bias towards being more in the office. Some are still more remote. But it does open up, I think, a permanent opportunity for more regional dispersion of talent.
Well, let me ask you, though, about the regional dispersion of talent, because it also seems like if AI is successful as we think it's going to be and create the productivity gains that we're talking about, that you may need a lot less people to actually be doing these jobs. You may need more robots. But the idea of having engineers, which is what we told all of our kids they were supposed to study in college because they were going to be programming these things and hopefully programming them in the middle of America, OpenAI might do it for you.
Well, I think there's some of that. And I've always said, even when I wrote the book, The Third Wave, 7 or 8 years ago, that not everybody should focus on coding. Some other skills around communication, collaboration, creativity are going to be more important. And you're right, AI is going to be doing some of the basic work, including the basic work in coding, which will make the coders a little less valuable. And the people who understand the core business problems in specific industries, whether it be healthcare, agriculture, other things, much more important. I think that does, again, tie into the possibility of more regional dispersion. We can't just have AI be big tech getting bigger, and we can't just have AI being Silicon Valley continuing to be dominant. We need to figure out a way to have a more dispersed innovation economy. That's always what's made America great. China has more of a centralized top-down system. We have more of a bottoms-up distributed system, and we need to make sure that philosophy that's driven our success over the last 250 years continues as we move into this AI revolution.
Steve, you have an eye for talent. I think I'm going to start hanging out with you. I mean, the guy you brought on the show was kind of your partner in a lot of these efforts to expand the prosperity. Are you surprised at the rapid ascension of J.D. Vance? He went from, palling around with you to a possible vice presidential candidate. Are you surprised? And is it, I mean, when you look at J.D., is he someone that you would see in that position someday?
Well, I think we worked well together on Rise of the Rest. Now it probably goes back 5 years or so ago. Then he left to move back to Ohio, start his own venture firm. So I haven't been in touch with him. I see him occasionally here in Washington, D.C. I always knew that he had interest in politics. I always knew he had interest in serving. The fact that he jumped into the race, ended up becoming a senator, happened a little faster than I might have anticipated. I think he is a voice around some of these issues around technology, certainly a voice around the importance of regional dispersion.
Right, but you're not going out on the road stumping for him anytime soon.
As you know, I've stayed out of politics for my entire life. Try to focus more on policy, bring people together, whether it be the Jobs Act 10 years ago or some of the focus on tech hubs, the Chips and Science Act. So I'll continue to remain on the sidelines politically and try to work with both parties to make sure America continues to lead, and we do it in a more inclusive way.
Before we let you go, talking about the CHIPS Act and just some of the work that's being done, talking about politics. How concerned are you right now about some of the tariff ideas that are being raised, by the way, by the Biden administration and by a potential former President Trump if he becomes the president?
I haven't focused as much on tariffs, to be honest. Most of the startup economy issues don't deal with that quite as much as some of the really, really big companies. I do think the core issue is making sure that we are making, as a country, the investments in R&D. Right now, it's a percentage of our economy. It's much lower than it historically has been. We've called for, including with our National Entrepreneurship Strategy that the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship put out a couple of months ago when we were at the White House, called for more of an investment there. I think we need to relook at our policies around immigration so we continue to attract and retain some of the brightest talent. We need to make sure we're making these investments in tech hubs, which is part of the Chips and Science Act. So fully funding the tech hubs, I think, is important. So those are some of the areas I've been mostly focused on as trying to make sure that America continues to lead. But as I said earlier, we do it in a more inclusive way. It's not just a few people in a few places doing well and other people feeling left out and left behind. We need to make sure this next wave is more inclusive. And that's why things like the announcement in Wisconsin, I think, is a big step forward.